The crimson dust storms of Kepler-7 battered against the reinforced windows of the Colonial Medical Center as Dr. James Harrison completed his nightly inventory. 3 years into his assignment on this frontier world, he'd grown accustomed to the perpetual rust-colored haze that painted everything in shades of red and orange. The facility's atmospheric processors hummed steadily, filtering out the caustic particles that made the planet's surface nearly uninhabitable without protective gear. James ran his hand through his graying hair, checking the dwindling supply of synthetic blood substitutes. The next supply ship wouldn't arrive for another 2 months, and resources were always tight on the colony's outer reaches. At 45, he'd chosen this posting for its solitude, a chance to escape the chaos of Earth's overcrowded medical centers. Most of his patients were miners and farmers, tough folk who'd carved out a living on this harsh world. The emergency alert shattered the quiet, its pulsing red glow casting eerie shadows across the clinic's stark white walls. Through the storm-streaked windows, James spotted a vessel he'd never seen before, its crystalline hull reflecting the lightning that crackled through the dust clouds. Medical emergency protocol engaged, the facility's AI announced. Unknown vessel requesting immediate assistance. Caution. Non-human life signs detected. James activated the airlock's decontamination sequence, his heart racing. In 3 years, he'd never encountered any non-human patients. The colony's location was too remote for most alien species to bother with. The airlock cycled open, and 2 tall figures stumbled in, carrying a third between them. Their crystalline exoskeletons caught the light, sending rainbow refractions dancing across the walls. But it was their burden that caught James's breath. A female of their species, her crystalline form cracked and splintering, silvery fluid seeping from the fractures. "Please," one of the carriers spoke, their voice resonating like wind through crystal chimes. "She dies without help. We are Lumini. Our ship, damaged in storm." James's medical training kicked in, pushing aside his wonder at these extraordinary beings. "Get her to the main bay," he ordered, already preparing his diagnostic equipment. He'd never treated a crystalline-based life form before, but the fundamentals of emergency medicine remained the same. Stabilize, assess, treat. The injured Lumini's eyes opened as they transferred her to the examination table. They were like swirling nebulae, depths of purple and blue that seemed to contain entire galaxies. "I am Lyra," she whispered, her voice weak but musical. "The storms, they resonate, shatter our hull." "I'm Dr. Harrison." "James," he replied, scanning her injuries. "Try to stay still. Your crystalline structure shows multiple fracture patterns." The diagnostic readouts were unlike anything he'd seen before. Her body seemed to be composed of living crystal, organic yet mineral, with complex energy patterns flowing through the crystalline matrix. The damage was severe. Several major fissures threatened to shatter her core structure, and the silvery fluid, some kind of life-sustaining medium, was draining rapidly. James's mind raced through his options. Traditional methods wouldn't work on her alien physiology, but perhaps. "Your resonance patterns are degrading," he explained, noting how the energy flows weakened around the fractures. "I need to stabilize them, but I've never treated anyone like you before. I'll have to improvise." Lyra's nebula eyes fixed on him with surprising intensity. "You understand resonance." "Basic principles only," James admitted, preparing a modified version of the sonic repair tools used for treating microfractures in human bones. "But I think I can adapt our technology to match your natural frequency." The other Lumini shifted nervously, their crystalline forms chiming softly. "Our healers use song," one explained. "The right frequencies can mend breaks, but we are not trained." James nodded, adjusting his equipment. "Then we'll combine our methods. I need you to sing. Maintain her base resonance. I'll use our tools to reinforce the healing pattern." As the Lumini began to sing, their harmonies filling the clinic with otherworldly music, James activated his modified sonic emitter. The frequencies merged, creating interference patterns that seemed to stabilize Lyra's failing energy matrix. Gradually, the silvery fluid slowed its leak, and the smallest fractures began to seal. Hours passed as James worked, his human technology dancing with alien harmonics to save a life that defied his medical training. When the last major fissure finally stabilized, he stepped back, exhausted but satisfied. "The critical damage is repaired," he announced, studying the readings. "But you'll need time to fully heal. The deeper fractures will require multiple treatments." Lyra's nebula eyes had brightened, the swirling colors more vibrant. "You have done what even our healers might find challenging," she said softly. "A human doctor, using machines to sing to crystals." James managed a tired smile. "Medicine is about understanding patterns, in bodies, in diseases, in healing. The medium doesn't matter as much as the principles." He began preparing a recovery chamber, adjusting the atmospheric mix to better support her crystalline biology. "You'll need to stay here while your matrix rebuilds. At least a few days." As the other Lumini helped settle Lyra into the chamber, James couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter would change everything. He'd come to Kepler-7 seeking solitude, but instead found himself bridging the gap between human and alien medicine in ways he'd never imagined possible. What he didn't realize then was just how profound that bridge would become, or how his improvised harmony of human science and alien resonance would create something unprecedented in the history of both their species. The weeks following Lyra's emergency treatment transformed the quiet Colonial Medical Center into an impromptu research facility. Dr. James Harrison spent his days studying the complex resonance patterns that governed Lumini physiology, while his nights were filled with attempts to modify human medical technology to better serve his unique patient. Lyra proved to be an eager participant in their shared discovery process. Though still confined to the specially modified recovery chamber, she watched with fascination as James worked, her nebula eyes tracking his movements with an intensity that both unnerved and intrigued him. "Your methods are unlike anything in our medical traditions," she observed one evening as James adjusted the sonic harmonics of her treatment. "We heal through pure resonance, yet you blend technology with natural frequencies in ways we never considered." James calibrated the equipment, noting how the energy patterns in her crystalline form responded to the adjusted frequencies. "Necessity breeds innovation," he replied, trying to focus on the readings rather than the swirling depths of her eyes. "Human medicine had to evolve quickly to deal with our fragile biology. We can't naturally regenerate like your people. Perhaps that's why you understand healing so deeply," Lyra mused, her voice creating subtle harmonics that made the medical instruments hum. "When every injury could be fatal, you learned to fight harder for life." The deeper fractures in her crystalline matrix were healing slowly but steadily. James had developed a treatment protocol that combined traditional Lumini healing songs with modified sonic therapy. The results were promising, though some of the readings defied conventional medical understanding. "These energy patterns," he muttered, studying the particularly complex resonance wave. "They're not just healing the fractures, they're actually strengthening the surrounding crystal structure. It's as if our combined methods are creating something entirely new." Lyra shifted in her chamber, the movement sending rainbow refractions dancing across the clinic walls. "Among my people, we believe that healing is more than mere repair. Each challenge we survive changes us, makes us more than we were." She reached out, her crystalline fingers brushing the chamber's barrier near where James worked. "Your human persistence, combined with our resonance, perhaps we are both becoming more." James felt his pulse quicken at her words, aware of how their daily sessions had grown increasingly intimate. What had begun as emergency treatment had evolved into something far more complex. He found himself sharing stories of Earth during their sessions, while Lyra taught him about Lumini culture and their deep connection to cosmic harmonies. "Your latest scans show remarkable improvement," he said, deliberately steering the conversation back to medical matters. "The major fractures have almost completely sealed. Soon you won't need the chamber at all." "And then what, Dr. Harrison?" Lyra's question held layers of meaning that made James pause. Will you simply send me back to the stars once I'm healed? Before he could respond, the clinic's monitors registered a sudden spike in resonance energy. Lyra's crystalline form began to pulse with an inner light, her matrix vibrating at frequencies that shouldn't have been possible. Something's happening, she gasped, her nebula eyes widening. The harmonics. They're changing. James rushed to stabilize the readings, but nothing in his medical training had prepared him for this. The energy patterns were shifting, creating interference waves that seemed to bridge the gap between human and Lumini biology. Your core resonance is altering, he explained, watching in amazement as new crystalline formations began to grow within the healing fractures. It's as if your body is adapting to our combined treatment methods, creating hybrid structures that shouldn't exist. Lyra's form stabilized, the glow subsiding but leaving behind subtle changes in her crystalline matrix. Where before her structure had been purely geometric, now organic patterns swirled through the crystal, almost like human cellular patterns translated into mineral form. I feel different, she whispered, examining her transformed body. More attuned to frequencies I never sensed before. Your human resonance. James ran every diagnostic he could think of, but the results only deepened the mystery. Lyra's new hybrid structure was stable, stronger than before, yet fundamentally changed. Their experimental treatments hadn't just healed her. They'd sparked an evolutionary leap that defied both human and Lumini medical science. This could change everything, he breathed, already imagining the implications for both their species. The potential applications for regenerative medicine alone. James, Lyra interrupted softly, using his first name for the first time. I don't think this is just about medicine anymore. She was right, of course. Somewhere between emergency surgery and groundbreaking discovery, between human determination and alien harmony, they'd created something unprecedented. The resonance patterns that now flowed between them spoke of connections far deeper than doctor and patient. As the twin suns of Kepler-7 sat outside the clinic windows, casting the recovery chamber in shades of amber and gold, James realized that his quiet posting on this frontier world had become the epicenter of a revolution, not just in medical science, but in the very nature of human-alien relations. What he didn't know yet was that the transformation they'd witnessed was only the beginning. The hybrid resonance patterns growing stronger between them would soon challenge not just medical ethics, but the fundamental laws of both their species. The Colonial Medical Board's transmission arrived exactly 1 month after Lyra's transformation. James stared at the urgent message flashing on his screen, his fingers drumming nervously on the desk. The board had caught wind of his experimental treatments, likely from the automated medical logs, and demanded an immediate explanation for what they termed unauthorized cynobiological procedures. In the adjacent room, Lyra worked with the sonic harmonics equipment, her crystalline form casting prismatic patterns across the walls. She'd insisted on learning human medical technology, showing an aptitude that amazed James. The hybrid resonance patterns in her matrix had stabilized, creating a unique bridge between organic and mineral biology that defied conventional science. They're threatening to revoke my license, James announced, finally breaking the tense silence. Apparently, combining human medical technology with alien healing practices violates about 17 different protocols. Lyra turned from her work, her nebula eyes swirling with concern. Your people would punish you for saving my life. It's more complicated than that. James ran a hand through his hair, a habit that had become more frequent lately. What we've done here, what we've created, it goes beyond emergency treatment. The changes in your crystalline structure, the way you can now interface with our technology, it's unprecedented. And that frightens them, Lyra concluded, moving closer. The subtle humming of her altered resonance filled the space between them, a constant reminder of their unique connection. Just as my own people would likely fear the changes in me. She wasn't wrong. The Lumini vessels that had brought her to Kepler-7 had departed weeks ago, promising to return once she had healed. But how would they react to her transformation? The pure crystalline symmetry of their species had been altered in her, replaced by flowing patterns that mimicked human cellular structures. "I've been documenting everything," James said, pulling up his research files. "The harmonic integration, the biological adaptations, the potential medical applications. If I can prove that our methods are safe, that they could benefit both species." A sudden spike in the clinic's energy readings interrupted him. Lyra's matrix was pulsing with increased intensity, responding to his distress in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The connection between them had grown stronger over the weeks, moving beyond the bounds of normal doctor-patient interaction. "Your resonance patterns are affecting me," she explained, placing a crystalline hand over her core. "I feel your concern, your determination. Emotions translated into frequencies that my altered form can now perceive." James checked the monitors, fascinated despite his worry. "The hybrid structures we created aren't just physical changes. They're allowing for some kind of quantum entanglement between our different biologies. Among my people, such bonds are sacred," Lyra said softly. "We believe that when resonance patterns align perfectly, it marks a destined connection. But never in our history has such alignment occurred with another species." The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. James had been fighting his growing feelings for weeks, telling himself it was just scientific fascination, professional concern for a unique patient. But the resonance readings told a different story, one of two beings from different worlds creating something entirely new together. "The medical board wants me to terminate all treatments immediately," he admitted, watching how the news made her crystalline form flicker with distress. "They're sending an inspection team. We have 3 days." Lyra's response was cut short by another energy surge, stronger than before. The clinic's equipment went haywire as resonance waves pulsed outward from her transformed matrix. James rushed to her side, medical training warring with personal concern. "Something's changing again," she gasped, her nebula eyes blazing with inner light. "The harmonics. They're evolving, adapting." James watched in amazement as new patterns formed within her crystalline structure, more complex than anything they'd seen before. The hybrid biology they'd created was continuing to evolve, pushing the boundaries of what either of them thought possible. "These readings," he muttered, studying the data streaming across his screens. "It's as if your matrix is trying to achieve some kind of perfect resonant state, combining elements of both our species." Lyra steadied herself against him, the contact sending shivers of energy through them both. "Perhaps it's not just my form that's changing," she suggested, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with his very cells. "Perhaps we are both becoming something more than we were." The clinic's systems struggled to process the unprecedented energy patterns flowing between them. Outside, the eternal dust storms of Kepler-7 painted the windows red, but inside, the air itself seemed to shimmer with possibility. "We have 3 days," James repeated, making a decision that would alter both their futures. 3 days to either prove that what we've discovered is too valuable to stop, or to leave. Lyra finished, her transformed matrix pulsing in sync with his heartbeat. "To find a place where we can continue our work without interference." The choice hung between them, weighted with professional ethics, personal desires, and the tantalizing promise of discoveries that could revolutionize both their species' understanding of life itself. But as another wave of resonance energy washed through the clinic, James realized that science and medicine had become secondary to something far more profound. They had 3 days to decide not just the future of their research, but of the unprecedented connection growing stronger between them with each passing moment. The inspection team from the Colonial Medical Board was due to arrive in less than 24 hours when James's world turned upside down. He'd been reviewing Lyra's latest scans, searching for ways to explain their breakthrough treatments to the board, when the readings stopped making sense. "These energy patterns," he muttered, recalibrating his equipment for the 3rd time. "They're completely different from anything we've seen before. It's almost as if—" "James." Lyra's melodic voice carried an unusual tension. She stood in the doorway of his office, her crystalline form emanating waves of resonance that made every piece of medical equipment in the clinic hum in response. I believe I know why the patterns have changed. The transformation in her hybrid matrix had continued to evolve over the past 2 days, creating increasingly complex harmonics that defied analysis. Now, as she moved closer, James could actually see new formations developing within her crystalline structure, spreading outward from her core in organic flowing patterns. "There's a new resonance frequency," she explained, placing her hand over her central matrix, "a harmony I'd never experienced before. Among my people, such patterns only occur during." The realization hit James like a physical blow. He rushed to adjust his scanners, focusing them on her core matrix where the new patterns originated. The readings confirmed what should have been impossible: a growing crystal structure with both lumini and human genetic markers. "You're pregnant," he breathed, staring at the data in disbelief. "But how?" "The biological differences between our species. The hybrid resonance we created," Lyra said softly, her nebula eyes swirling with emotions he was only beginning to understand. "It didn't just change my external matrix. It altered everything, made something new possible." The monitors showed the developing crystal structure pulsing with unprecedented energy patterns, combining the geometric precision of lumini biology with the adaptive flexibility of human DNA. Their experimental treatments hadn't just healed Lyra. They'd created the potential for something that should never have existed. The medical board, James realized with growing alarm. If they discover this, a human lumini hybrid would be unprecedented. They'd want to study you, study the child. Lyra's matrix flared with protective energy, the new life within her core responding to her distress. My people, too, would struggle to accept this miracle. Some would see it as a corruption of our pure crystalline nature. James began frantically gathering data, his mind racing through possibilities. They had hours before the inspection team arrived. Hours to decide the fate of not just their research, but their child. A being that represented either the greatest breakthrough or the greatest transgression in the history of both their species. The outer colonies, he suggested, already formulating a plan. Beyond colonial medical board jurisdiction, there are independent research stations that would. A sudden surge of energy from Lyra's matrix interrupted him. The developing crystal structure was growing stronger, its unique resonance patterns affecting the very fabric of reality around them. Equipment sparked and flickered as waves of hybrid energy pulsed through the clinic. "The child," Lyra gasped, her form glowing with internal light. "Its resonance, it's already so strong, so different." James watched in amazement as the energy patterns created visible distortions in the air, bending light and gravity in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Their baby, still barely formed, was already demonstrating abilities that transcended both human and lumini limitations. "We need to protect it," he said firmly, making his decision, not just from those who would fear it, but from those who would try to exploit it. This child could change everything we understand about life itself. Lyra's crystalline hand found his, their touch creating a cascade of harmonics that seemed to bridge the gap between their different forms of existence. "Then we run," she said simply, "not just for the child, but for us, for what we've discovered together." As if in response to her words, the baby's resonance patterns stabilized, creating a perfect harmony between its parents' disparate biologies. The monitors showed something extraordinary. The hybrid crystal structure was developing its own unique properties, neither fully human nor fully lumini, but something entirely new. "We'll need supplies," James said, already moving to gather essential medical equipment. "And we'll have to disable the clinic's tracking systems before." A proximity alert cut through his planning. The inspection team's ship had arrived early, its shadow visible through the dust-streaked windows as it descended toward the colony's landing pad. "Time's up," Lyra observed, her matrix pulsing with determination. "What's your decision, Dr. Harrison? Stay and face their judgment, or leap into the unknown?" James looked at his life's work, at the clinic he built on this frontier world, then at the extraordinary being before him carrying an even more extraordinary child. In the end, it wasn't really a choice at all. The unknown, he said, reaching for her hand. Always the unknown. As they hurried to prepare for their escape, neither of them noticed how the baby's resonance patterns had begun to affect the dust storms outside, creating strange, beautiful patterns in the swirling red clouds, the first sign that their child would reshape not just their lives, but the very nature of reality itself. 6 months into their exile, James and Lyra found sanctuary in an abandoned research station orbiting a distant pulsar. The facility's powerful electromagnetic field helped mask their presence, while its advanced laboratories provided everything they needed to monitor Lyra's unprecedented pregnancy. The baby's development had transformed the station into something extraordinary. Crystalline formations grew along the corridors, pulsing with hybrid energy that responded to its parents' presence. James had converted the main laboratory into a medical bay, its walls now lined with equipment modified to handle the unique challenges of their situation. "The resonance patterns are off the charts again," James announced, studying the latest readings. The child's energy signature had grown exponentially, creating phenomena that defied both human science and Lumini understanding. "She's affecting gravitational fields now." Lyra floated serenely in the modified containment field they'd designed, her transformed matrix glowing with internal light. The pregnancy had accelerated her own evolution, pushing the boundaries of her hybrid biology. "She dreams in frequencies," she said softly, placing a crystalline hand over her core. "I can feel her reaching out, touching the fabric of space itself." Their daughter, they were certain it was a girl, had developed abilities that should have been impossible. Her growing consciousness could manipulate energy, matter, and even time in ways that suggested she might be the next step in both their species' evolution. "The latest scans show her crystal structure is completely unique," James explained, projecting a holographic image of their child's matrix. "Neither human nor Lumini, but a perfect synthesis of both. She's creating her own laws of physics." As if in response to her father's words, the baby's energy surged, sending waves of resonance through the station. Equipment floated free of its moorings, surrounded by halos of crystalline light. The very air seemed to shimmer with possibility. "The birth will be soon," Lyra announced, her nebula eyes tracking patterns only she could see. "She's nearly ready to emerge into this reality." James nodded, trying to hide his concern. They had no precedent for this, no guide for how to safely bring a hybrid child into the world. The power she already possessed in the womb was staggering. What would happen when she finally took her first breath? Their planning was interrupted by an alert from the station's long-range sensors. 2 ships were approaching, one with the geometric precision of Lumini design, the other bearing colonial medical board markings. "They found us," James said grimly, checking the readings. "Both our peoples, arriving just in time for the birth." Perfect timing. Lyra's matrix pulsed with protective energy. "They cannot have her. She belongs to no world, no species but her own." Before James could respond, their daughter's resonance patterns shifted dramatically. The approaching ships suddenly froze in space, caught in a bubble of altered time. Inside the station, reality itself seemed to flex and bend as the child exerted her impossible abilities. "She's protecting us," Lyra gasped, her form beginning to glow brighter. "But she's also, yes, it's time. She's coming." The birth of their daughter transformed the research station into ground zero for a new form of existence. As Lyra's matrix opened to release the child, waves of hybrid energy cascaded through reality. James watched in awe as their baby emerged, a perfect fusion of crystalline grace and human warmth, her form shifting between states of matter as naturally as breathing. Her first cry wasn't a sound but a symphony of resonance that touched every corner of space-time. The frozen ships outside began to move again, but differently, their trajectories altered not by physics but by understanding. Through their daughter's power, both vessels' crews experienced a moment of perfect clarity, seeing the truth of what had been created. "She's beautiful," James whispered, tears streaming down his face as he cradled their impossible child. Her form stabilized into something miraculous, crystalline skin that pulsed with human warmth, eyes that held both starfields and recognizable human emotion. "Stella," Lyra said softly, reaching out to touch their daughter's glowing form. "Her name is Stella, for she bridges the stars themselves." The baby, Stella, cooed, creating patterns of light that danced through the air. Her very existence represented something revolutionary, proof that the boundaries between species were not fixed, that love and science together could create miracles. When the ships finally docked, their crews emerged transformed by what they'd witnessed. The Colonial Medical Board representatives and Lumini elders stood together in the station's main chamber, watching in wonder as Stella demonstrated her ability to reshape reality with a thought. "She is neither human nor Lumini," James explained to their assembled audience. "She's the first of something new. Not a hybrid, but an evolution, a bridge between all forms of life." The resonance patterns, one of the Lumini elders observed, their crystalline form humming in response to Stella's energy. "They speak of possibilities we never imagined." The medical board's chief inspector, who had come to arrest James, instead found herself asking questions about the future. What other barriers might fall? What other miracles might be possible? As the dust settled and negotiations began for a new form of cooperation between their peoples, James and Lyra held their miracle child between them. Stella's powers had already begun reshaping their corner of the galaxy, creating spaces where different forms of life could exist together, evolve together. "You know," James said, watching their daughter casually reverse entropy in a corner of the room, "when you first arrived at my clinic, I thought I was just a doctor treating an injured patient." Lyra's crystalline form chimed with laughter. "And I thought I was just a refugee in need of healing. Instead, we discovered that love is the greatest force for change in any universe." Stella chose that moment to create a miniature galaxy above her crib, its spiral arms formed from strands of human DNA interwoven with Lumini crystal matrices. As her parents watched their impossible child play with the building blocks of reality itself, they knew that their story was more than just a tale of forbidden love or medical breakthroughs. It was proof that in an infinite universe, the only true boundaries are the ones we choose to believe in. And sometimes, all it takes to break those boundaries is a doctor willing to try something new, a patient brave enough to trust, and the miracle they created together.